A little while back, I did a video on this, the Walrus Audio ACS-1. It's basically an amp modeler, cab simulator that allows you to run your electric guitar direct. Whether you're recording or playing live with a PA, it gives you a quick and easy way to amplify your guitar. Now, my initial impressions of this pedal were really good. It sounds good, but there were some shortcomings. There were some things that I think could be better or at least different so that it stacked up against the competition a little better. Now, come to find out, recently, a few months back, Walrus actually released a firmware update and addressed some of these things that I mentioned in that initial video. I don't know if they saw my video or if this is just overall user feedback, but I think it's super cool that they were able to address some of these things and make a good pedal even better. Today we're going to take a listen to that update. We're going to talk about some of the things that they changed and some ways that I think it made this pedal even better. All right, let's get into it. If you haven't seen my initial ACS-1 video, definitely go check it out. There I share my initial impressions and just overall thoughts on the pedal. One of the big cons I talk about in that video is the lack of gain on all the amp models. The Fender model in particular would hardly break up with the gain knob turned all the way up. And when you're comparing it to something like the Strymon Iridium, the Walrus is much less versatile and just doesn't give you the wide variety of tones. Now, that being said, with the new firmware update from Walrus, they have updated the amount of gain that we can get from all the models. And I think this is a huge win. I think this makes it a lot more versatile and is going to give you a much larger variety of tones. Even with this latest update, the ACS-1 still doesn't provide as much gain as something like the Strymon Iridium. And I think that's okay. I think their goal with this pedal was to make an amp modeler pedal that serves as a good platform to use with overdrives or other distortion pedals. More and more players are using this as a way to get different sounds and to have different gain stages. And the ACS-1 works really well for this. The little bit that I've been able to use it live, I've been really happy with my tone, and I felt like that it took overdrive pedals super well. I mentioned this in my initial video, but I do think the feel of the ACS-1 is really good and feels really natural for someone who is used to playing amps that are mic'd up. Another thing that Walrus tweaked were the compression characteristics of the pedal. Now, this isn't something that I noticed in my initial video or really had a problem with, but this should reduce compression and allow overdrive pedals to interface even better with the pedal. Now, literally just yesterday, I walked into a conversation where a couple of guitar players were talking about the ACS-1. I swear this was all by chance. And one of them mentioned that he was playing two ACS-1s, and he had heard that one was updated and one was not, but he didn't know which was which. He said one felt a lot more compressed to him, he didn't like the sound as much, and the other one sounded and felt great. Now, according to what I've read about the update, that kind of tells me which is which. The more open, better sounding one is the newest update, and the one that was more compressed was probably the older one. Now, again, this isn't something that jumped out to me when I initially checked out the pedal, but, you know, again, I feel like the pedal sounds even better than I remember it sounding, and just is working really well for me in my setup. I'll also point out here that one cool thing that you can do with this pedal is check out the different firmware updates. You update the pedal through an online interface, and they actually have the previous firmwares available. So you can go in and hear the older version and then update it to the newer version and go back and forth if you want it to. Now, you know, the update takes a few minutes, so it's going to be hard to really A/B them very quickly, but that is an option if you say, hey, maybe I want it to be a little more compressed, or maybe I like the older version better than the new one. That might be the case for some people, but either way, Walrus gives you the option. Let's take a closer look at the pedal. I want to talk about a few things that Walrus did that I think make it more usable and just easier to use. One is they kind of changed the shape of the EQ, or just the overall EQ of the pedal, to make it a little darker. And for me, I really like this because I can set all of the EQ controls at noon as a good starting point. So here's the Vox amp, and then I'm playing my Strat. Now, obviously, I'm going to tweak that a little bit, but it's a good starting point. It's not too bright, and I think this is going to be great for people who are new to amp modelers, who, you know, maybe when they first play them, they're not used to maybe the brightness or the harshness that a lot of times modelers have initially that sometimes takes some getting used to. I think that a lot of people aren't used to how an amp sounds mic'd up or how guitars sound in a mix. Typically, they're going to be a little brighter, not as full. A lot of that stuff gets cut out in the mix, or just miking it up just gives you a different sound and a different feel. So I think that the ACS-1 does a good job with this update of providing a really solid starting point with the EQ at noon. One other thing that Walrus did with the ACS-1 update is they added low pass and high pass filters, and you can access these by holding the bypass switch and then using the treble knob and the bass knob. And this basically cuts out those super low frequencies or those super high frequencies. A lot of times people will use a low pass filter to cut out some of those really high frequencies. Typically, guitar amp speakers have a pretty sharp roll off around 5K. That doesn't mean that there aren't higher frequencies coming through. There definitely are, but a lot of times getting rid of some of that digital harshness or, just weirdness up top, we can use a low pass filter to allow all of those lower frequencies to pass and those super high frequencies not to pass. Here's what that low pass filter sounds like. Now, I think for me, I would probably just barely roll that down if I used it at all. I think the stock IRs on the ACS-1 actually sound really good, and especially with this tweaked EQ of the update, they really do provide a great starting point to kind of dial it in for whatever guitar you're using. Another cool thing that I really like with this update is they've kind of normalized the volume and gain controls. I'm not really sure how else to say this, but basically as you turn the gain knob up, it kind of compensates overall volume. So you're not having to juggle back and forth between the gain and the volume. You know, a lot of times, even with amps, as you turn the gain up, you know, it just gets really, really loud. So you have to turn the volume back. And this makes it so you can kind of just tweak that gain and the volume stays around, you know, around the same ballpark overall, your main output. That's super convenient and super helpful just when you're trying to get more gain, you're trying to dial in sounds, but you're also trying to juggle your volume. I think that that's a super great update that's just really helpful and really practical. Another feature they added with the update is the ability to bypass the IR block in the pedal. This is so that you could maybe use IRs in a different place, maybe inside your DAW. This is something I like to do a lot, where I record an amp and use IRs in my DAW in Pro Tools, and then that way I can change them later. Maybe I want to get a slightly different tone once, you know, the mix starts building up with a lot of different things. Maybe I want to try some different things. So that's kind of a hidden feature, and what we do with that is we hold this bypass down again, and then we use the mid knob to control that. So when that's green, we're using the IR, and then when it goes to red, we have gotten rid of it. We definitely want to make sure that if you're playing it direct, you want that IR in there, because otherwise it's going to sound real nasty. I'm really liking the update on this pedal. I think that it takes a great pedal and makes it even better. And the coolest thing to me, honestly, is that Walrus is taking user feedback. They're listening to what their customers are saying, and they're making things, you know, better and more suited to the people who are using them. I think we're going to see that more and more with newer gear companies, especially as things move into the digital realm. The ability to update things, the ability to change things based on what people are saying and what people want, what customers want. And I think that's super cool and is just going to make for better sounding gear. Also want to say a big thank you to Walrus Audio. You might have noticed at the beginning of this video that it's a sponsored video, and I'm required to say that because Walrus sent the ACS-1 to me for free. I reached out to them and mentioned I wanted to do a follow-up on the pedal since they had done an update that seemed to address some of the issues that I had initially had with it, and so they sent me one, and for that I'm very grateful. Thank you, Walrus. I'll also say that I was still able to say whatever I wanted to about the pedal. I was able to give my honest feedback. So anything that you heard in this video is, you know, my thoughts on the pedal and what I think about it. That's going to do it for this one. As always, thank you for watching. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, ring the bell for notifications, all of that. This is YouTube. You know what to do. It all helps support the channel. Another way you can support the channel is check the links down in the description. There's more info on the Walrus ACS-1, as well as links to my store with speaker IRs, HX Stomp presets, Kemper profiles. My course is down there on creating and layering guitar parts. Those are a lot of concepts that I use when I create my demos, you know, for all these videos. For the price of a guitar lesson, I kind of walk you through my process and how I think about all that stuff to come up with great parts that work together. Anyways, that's enough of that. Until next time, I'll see you out there.